As we get into tonight's word, I know you came here for an appointed time, that God has something amazing for you, especially who showed up here tonight. And I believe that God is going to do some great and mighty things in and through the word tonight. Before I get into the word, I wanted to talk to you about something that happened to me when I was when I was in Japan, and I'm still in the military, but when I was there, something happens when you're on an island. You just lose all self-control. You go wild. And I remember in our work center, it was terrible there. It was like the most, foul-mouthed speaking that you could ever encounter. There was arguments, and there was a lot of things going on. But there was a beacon of light during that time. Now that as I think about it, his name was Sergeant White. He was an African-American sergeant who was in charge of a few of us. And I remember whenever we would be talking the way we were talking, acting out the way we were acting, he would always say something that stuck with me. He would always say, "Y'all need Jesus." And it sounds so simple, but that's all he would say was, "Y'all need Jesus." And I remember flash forward years later, I was searching for guidance, searching for purpose, searching to have the emptiness filled within me. And I remember I was in my living room in Okinawa, Japan, and I was trying to search my hardest to find God. And all that stuck in my head was that, yes, I need Jesus. Amen. And when I say y'all need Jesus tonight, I'm talking about the communal all, including myself. And when I think about how each and every one of us needs Jesus, because y'all need Jesus just as much as I do, we're going to go into a couple of quick points about how much we do need Jesus. There's many more. I wish I could go over all of them. But we're going to talk about a few of them tonight that are of paramount importance. But you have to imagine that you're stranded in a vast desert. Imagine, if you will, if you're thirsty, you're lost, you're wondering, and you don't know where to go. And then all of a sudden an individual comes up to you with a glass of water, a compass, a car, and he says, "Let's get out of this desert." And that's what Jesus does for us when we're lost and when we're bound by whatever we're going through. He gives us a way out. There's no way out of that lonely desert. There's no way out of those destructive places without y'all needing Jesus Christ in your lives. Something I realized a long time ago was that we don't realize how much we need Jesus until Jesus is all that we have. And it's more than desperation. It's understanding that all things come from him, and anything else outside of him is just us wondering. Open your Bibles, if you will, to Matthew chapter 4, verses 18 through 20. And it says, "As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and the other brother Andrew. And they were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. 'Come, follow me,' Jesus said, 'and I will send you out to fish for people.' And it says, at once they left their nets and they followed him." So in this instance, you could see that they needed Jesus. Just like y'all need Jesus. They needed Jesus for a purpose in their lives. See, when Jesus called Peter and Andrew, they were just regular fishermen. This wasn't like a really good job. It was just going through the mundane motions. It was a lower class job. But he called them and he said, "Follow me." And it says immediately they dropped everything and they went out and followed him because they found purpose. Just like y'all need Jesus to find your purpose. Because without him, we may have roles, jobs, hobbies, friends, careers, whatever. But if we don't need him to have that purpose, we'll miss out on the purpose that he has for you and I. Could you imagine if Peter and Andrew said, "You know what? I don't really trust you about what you're saying. In fact, I don't even know you." They didn't even know Jesus. But they left everything and they followed him because they understood that they needed purpose. They needed change. Something was hungering in their soul, just like many of you this evening. Something is hungering and brewing in your soul where there's a deeper purpose than just working, just living, just going through the motions. They were fishing in the water. But Jesus Christ said, now you're going to be fishing for people. See what it was? It was a higher purpose. It was a different purpose, right? From the water to the streets and the avenues to save souls, from feeding people with fish to saving souls. It was a higher purpose. And you and I, we need Jesus to find that higher purpose. Here's a question you can ask yourselves this evening. Do you look the same as you did last year? Are you in the same place as you were last year? Or have you grown because God has a higher purpose from you? But purpose also demands obedience, right? See, they had to listen to his words and heed his words and then go step by step to what he did. It wasn't, he didn't give them a 10-year plan right away and say, this is what I'm going to do. They had to trust him every step of the way. Just like the purpose for your life and my life, we have to trust him every step of the way. It's not going to come automatic in one day. But here's the fact. Without Jesus, we're just drifting away. We're just going through the motions. We're just existing. And I believe each and every person here that y'all need Jesus to stop just existing and to finally find your purpose. When you think about drifting, you have to think about a boat that is just in the ocean and it's letting the waves take them wherever it wants to take that boat. Basically, you're not in control of anything in that way. You don't have a purpose. You're just going with the waves. Many of our lives are like that. Many of our purposes are like that. We're just going through the motions. Maybe next year I'll start this. Maybe next year I'll do this and that. And it leaves us feeling horribly lost. And in those moments, that's when y'all need Jesus to find your purpose. Because true purpose, it gives us fulfillment. It changes everything and it transforms us to not just clocking in and out of life, but building on God's kingdom. And around the late 1800s, there was a baseball player by the name of Billy Sunday. Billy Sunday had found fame and fortune in playing baseball during this time. In fact, he was known for his aggressive playing power, his sliding power. He was known for all these great and wonderful things in terms of baseball. But as he went to Chicago for a game, he encountered a street preacher, and something began to click in his spirit. He began to see his true purpose. He found salvation in that moment. And lo and behold, he gave up a lucrative salary that would have been over $2 million in this very day. And he began to speak in churches. And something that was crazy about Billy Sunday was his preaching always involved analogies about baseball. He said one time, he says, the devil says I'm out, but Jesus says I'm safe. And in another instance, here's what he wrote. Let me find it right here. He said, I'd rather have a soul saved than 1,000 home runs. But what his story reminds us of is not finding purpose in what you're good at only, because he was amazing at baseball, right? But he found purpose in what Jesus had called him to do. Here's another quote he said, and I'll leave you with this quote about the purpose in that instance. He said, if you want to know about somebody's walk, ask their spouse. But he was a great and awesome minister who found purpose more than he had ever imagined. Because God's purpose is eternal. He didn't want just Peter and Andrew to be better fishermen. He called them to change their very lives, just like he's calling you and I. You and I to have a deeper purpose, because y'all need Jesus, just like I do, to find greater purpose in life. Mark chapter 11, verses 24 through 26. And the word reads, therefore I say to you, whatever things you ask when you pray, believe that you receive them and that you will have them. And whenever you stand praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive them, that your Father in heaven may also forgive you your trespasses. But if you do not forgive, neither will your Father in heaven forgive your trespasses. So you and I, especially y'all, need Jesus for forgiveness and to forgive, right? And I find this scripture just amazing, because what Jesus Christ, and I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit, he says, go ahead and pray for what you want and believe it to be so, and you will have it. But here's the caveat. But whenever you stand praying, whenever you begin to pray, if you're harboring resentment, if you have a problem with somebody, you better forgive them, just like Jesus forgave your trespasses. Because he says if you don't do that, then Jesus Christ, the Father in heaven, is not going to forgive you your trespasses. So how many times do we go into prayer with a heart of unforgiveness, asking Jesus Christ for things? Hey, Jesus Christ, I really need you to heal me. I really need you to change this situation, but I don't want to forgive what had happened to me. Because Jesus is teaching us that it's not a one-way street. It's not just about receiving forgiveness from God. It's about building on that forgiveness and forgiving others. Forgiving is hard, and many of you are saying it could even be impossible or seem impossible because lots of us have been hurt, damaged, left behind. And some people that we've encountered may make forgiveness almost impossible. But it's possible through Jesus. On our own, we can't do it. On our own, we have these hardened hearts that can't forgive. But y'all, you and I need Jesus to cultivate that attitude of forgiveness. Because unforgiveness blocks your blessings. See, we all want God's blessings, right? We all want the favor. We all want to see His work activated in our lives. But we hold grudges that block those blessings. Could it be even in this moment right now that you're in, that you haven't received the blessing you've been praying for? Maybe it's to have a new job. Maybe it's to be healed. Maybe it's for a house. Whatever the case may be, whatever that God had put in your heart. Maybe you haven't received those things because you have an unforgiving heart. Because Jesus Christ had called us to be imitators of Him, correct? And He forgave all things. But yet we can't forgive things that happen to us. And some of them are really small. You had an argument with a relative 25 years ago, and you can't even remember what it's about, but you still don't like them at all, right? And then come to find out when that forgiveness takes place, you would be like, hey, I don't even know what we were arguing about, but we wasted 25 years. Because the truth is, you all need Jesus because forgiveness sets you free. Carrying bitterness is like dragging around a ball and chain. It's always around you, and you can't navigate with that kind of weight on you. But when you're freed from it, then you can dance, then you can rise up, and then you can walk in your purpose. C.S. Lewis wrote this. He said, to be Christian means to forgive the inexcusable because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you. And Jesus said when we pray, if we're holding on to unforgiveness, it blocks our prayers. So your prayer is almost like it's in vain at those times when you're harboring unforgiveness. And everybody says God always hears our prayer. But this verse says right here, if you're holding on to unforgiveness, He may hear you, but He's not going to give you the answer that you want right away. Because y'all need Jesus to help you let go of that unforgiveness. And moreover, you need to begin to forgive yourselves. We can forgive others about what they've done to us, but we can't forgive ourselves about what we've done to others. And in the same way, it blocks what God has for us. Because we keep on thinking about, man, God, I know you want to take me to a different place. You want to deliver me. You want to take me from one place to another. You want me to go higher in the things of you, but I just can't forgive myself. I'll tell you what. On the cross, He already put whatever's been bugging on you on that very cross, and you've been forgiven. Because if Jesus can forgive those who nailed Him to the cross, He could truly forgive whatever it is that you've done in your life. And true forgiveness reflects God's heart. We want to be more like Jesus because that's why we're here. We want to continue to cultivate that heart of Jesus. That's why we're here, to be Christ-like. And the only way to do that is to begin to cultivate forgiveness. He walked in forgiveness. He modeled forgiveness. And y'all need Jesus to have forgiveness. Romans chapter 15, verse 13, rather. And we're halfway done. I know you guys are like, man, it's a school night. Like you guys go to school. Your kids do. Sorry. It says, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in Him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Two things stand out right there, joy and peace. And I believe these are two things that are absent from a lot of Christians' lives. We have that standard of we're not going to do this or that. We're quick to say we're going to abstain from this or that, but we lack joy and peace. And you wonder why your spiritual walk just feels mundane or feels average at times, because you're not walking in joy and peace. And the only way that we can have joy and peace is when you all need Jesus for joy and peace. The writer of the verse we just read is Paul. And Paul knew where joy and peace truly come from. It comes from Christ alone. He knew all about this because he had joy and peace even when he was in a jail cell. He had joy and peace when he was shipwrecked. He had joy and peace when he was bitten by a snake and it didn't even do nothing to him. He had joy and peace unto the day that he was beheaded as a martyr in Jesus Christ. That joy and peace means that we can understand that no matter what life is throwing at us, that God is still in control and things are going to work out the way they should. Years ago, I encountered an individual, and I remember, and this was Mexico City. He came from the bad areas of Mexico City, and I remember this guy was really poor. But everybody else in the service was, I don't know if they were well off. I don't know the economical standards there, but what I do know is that this man was truly poor. And I remember when the music started, everybody was there, not dancing, just like, the standard, grab the front of the pew, tap their leg when the worship came on. But this guy, damaged, broken, poor, with nothing, was the only guy to come up there, and I swear he danced like David danced. He had that joy and that peace that it was just standing out. Everybody else was walking in just the norms of the day. But we have to understand something, that Jesus is the only source of peace that we can have. The world only offers Band-Aids to what we're going through, right? The world only offers momentary things that aid us and help us. But Jesus offers that deep anchoring peace that no matter where life takes you, it's going to be okay. No matter what circumstance you're going through, it's going to be all right. And here's something I want you to write down for those of you who brought pen and paper. Joy is a weapon. Joy is a weapon against the enemy. Because what the enemy wants to steal, kill, and destroy is your joy, your peace, your hope. But when you have that joy, you can say, throw whatever you want at me. It doesn't matter. I'm going to survive. Joy is a true weapon. Because joy isn't just for the happy days. It helps you stand firm in the storms. And it helps you stand firm no matter what goes on. Praise Chapel minister years ago, I forgot her name. She came there and she spoke about how all these things have gone wrong. I mean, she had had an accident where she had caught on fire. She had actually gone through different areas where she began to lose her hair. As a woman, I guess that's your crowning glory, right? And all these things begin to happen to her. And then all of a sudden, she finds out that she has a form of cancer out of nowhere. And I remember she was talking about it, and she said, the friend of mine was just in tears. She's like, but I couldn't help but smile. And you know what she said? She said the only thing she was thinking about was, this is the day that the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. Even getting the bad news, she can have that attitude and cultivate that. But all it takes is one argument, one bad encounter, one bad incident to steal our joy. I'll tell you what. If you could look at whatever the devil might be throwing at you, whatever the enemy might be throwing at you, and you could say, I'm still going to have joy and know that the Lord is still with me, you're in a place that many haven't got to. Peace itself isn't based on circumstance either. The world's chaotic. Things are falling apart. It's always been like that. I don't think I've ever been in my entire life in a place where I was like skipping around and saying, hey, the world's doing well. It's in chaos always. But I've realized something, that if we have that peace, knowing that it doesn't matter what's going on in the world, but what matters is what it says in the Word, then we can have peace that transcends even the darkest moments. And I believe we need peace to navigate the trials, because life could shake us up. Even when you're, and here's the strangest thing I find about, and the most amazing thing I find about Christianity, is when you're serving deepest, that's when you're going through the deepest shaking, right? You're like, man, Lord, I'm doing everything that you've asked me. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm giving you my all, but yet this is going on. It's because he's teaching us that y'all need peace and comfort and joy no matter what is going on. And you have to trust Jesus for peace and joy. And I find something about peace and joy that is amazing, is that it's contagious. That when you have that peace and joy, no matter what you're going through, and you could still smile and praise through it all, that person is going through something else will see that and say there's hope and there's glory in following Jesus Christ. Peace and joy is something that's really not spoken about in many services, especially joy. It's almost like we like being beat up sometimes, I don't know. But joy, to have that smile no matter what's going on, to have that hope that says, Lord, I know it's difficult right now, but you've given me life and you've given me hope, and I'm going to smile through it all. Amen. Matthew 7, verses 9 through 11. I don't mean to go fast. I just feel the Spirit moving. So if I seem like I'm on fast forward, stop me. The verse reads, and this is Jesus speaking again, which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to you who ask him? Here's the truth. Y'all, you and I need Jesus for supplication. We need Jesus for provision. Because we'll find at times that we'll lack in areas, not just finances, but areas in our spiritual walk and areas in sometimes even finances. And we have to cry out to the Lord because guess what? He owns the hill and the cattle on it, so he's able to provide for us no matter what. And Jesus isn't just dropping a line to let them know this. He's reminding us even that God is a good father. And good fathers don't leave their kids hanging. He's got what you need, and he's more than willing to give you what you need if only you would ask for it in the right motive. I mean, we got 4 kids, and I'll tell you what, the 3-year-olds, and this is no lie, they ask to go to Target all the time. And they'll bug, and finally, being the good father that I am, I'll be like, sure, let's go, you know. And when you have the children, those of you who don't have children, but those of you who do, you know, when you have children and they give you that look and they ask for something and they ask for something, you can't help but have your heart melt and say, yes, I'll provide for you. Even if, you know, especially with our 15-year-old, I don't mean to call him out, but he at times is not the best teenager. I don't think there is the best teenager. But even when he's bad, I still get him things. And the reason why is because I want him to understand what grace is. Because that's truly what it is. Getting things you do not deserve, but you still grasp them and get them. And that's how the Lord provides for you and I also. Whatever we have, whatever we've gained, it's not what we've gained, it's what he's given us through provisions out of grace, because we don't deserve anything. And when we want provision from the Lord, we have to be dependent on him. But here's the fact. Sometimes we treat God, sometimes we treat Jesus like a last-minute call to customer service or something, right? Like we tried everything else, but let me try this. It's like Jesus Christ is the backup plan instead of the first and only plan. Because God truly provides our needs if we are dependent on him. Jesus said it plain as we just read. God is better even than the most earthly dad, even me. I'm a great father. No amens. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. But if human fathers, just like me, give their kids good gifts, I mean, if you come to our house, you know there's like a big toy bin everywhere. It's like a playground, right? But I wasn't treated like that when I was younger, so I didn't understand what grace was. I didn't understand what it meant to be provided for and to get good gifts, even when I tried. So now I have this thing where whatever my kids ask for, as long as I have the means, they'll get it. And I believe God is even better than that. He has the means for all things, and as long as he is able to provide and you are in his will and you are seeking him, he will provide for you. But we often seek those provisions in the wrong places. We scramble to find the answer in the right places. Oh, where can I find this answer? We go through different jobs, different bank accounts, do this, do that. Some people are like, man, I even need to get a second job. No. You just need to get down on your knees and begin to pray to Jesus and say, I know you'll provide for me. Because oftentimes, seeking provision outside of Jesus Christ is like being thirsty but going to a contaminated well. But we must ask in faith. Jesus tells us he doesn't tell us just to sit around wishing, God, I wish this would happen. He wants us to begin to believe that and understand that he has all things in his hands. Sometimes when I pray and I'm in need, and this is something I've been doing frequently because I've been in a lot of need, probably because all the toys I bought so far for our kids. But I've always prayed, and I prayed it just a minute ago, a while ago. I always pray, Jesus, I know you own the hill and the cattle on it. I know you own all things, and you can provide and even help me even in the situation I'm in right now. I believe you and I can experience great wonders and provision, great wonders in all things. George Washington Carver, if you know who he was an inventor, and he was the guy who developed the peanut, even if you will. But he just didn't sit around cracking shells for fun, saying, oh, this tastes good, this might be whatever. Every day, and this is chronicled, he prayed to God to show him what to do with this invention that he found, this peanut that he discovered. And instead of relying on his own smarts, thinking about what could this be used for, he prayed every day for divine inspiration, provision. God, show me direction, give me the guidance. And over the time frame, boom, out of nowhere, there was discovered 300 uses for peanuts later on. I don't know what those 300 are, but he ended up revolutionizing the agricultural state in the South, and it's something that's a staple to all of us. During the certain world wars that we went through, World War I and II, the peanut butter was used frequently by soldiers, and it was utilized in everywhere, all because this person decided not to dwell on his own guidance, not to dwell on his own supplication, but to seek divine guidance beyond human wisdom. And I believe that we can experience great provision. There's a verse in the Bible that says that every person owned a home and a farm. And I believe that's true for even us this very day if we begin to believe that Jesus Christ could supply for us. That we not be a church that lives in lack, but we are a church that lives in abundance, not material-wise, but moreover spiritual-wise, beyond material needs. It's not just a grocery list that we give to God, but also getting that spiritual food that we need from Jesus Christ. It's that divine supply chain that we could tap into if only we would understand that we need Jesus for supplication and provision. Here's something that a friend of mine told me. He said, God's not stingy. God is willing to give. God's willing to provide. And he gives us more than enough. But we just need to begin to allow him to fill us and overflow us and understand that he is the only means. But supplication also requires humility. A lot of us lack that provision that we need, those things that we need, because we fail to ask and be vulnerable in sight of God. Rather than humbling ourselves at the altar and saying, Lord, I can't handle this, I need your help, we try to find our own means and our own way to get through it. But here's the thing. When you all come to Jesus Christ open-handed, he begins to deliver. But if you come to the altar with closed fists, how is he going to be able to drop those blessings into your hands? The bottom line is, don't stress over things all the time. When you come to God, when you come to Jesus, you're not bothering him with what your need is. He's waiting on you to ask for that supplication. Because you and I, y'all need Jesus to have that true provision. Acts chapter 4, verse 12. It says, salvation is found in nowhere else, for there is no other name under heaven given to mankind by which we must be saved. Y'all need Jesus for salvation. Salvation is found in no one else but Jesus. That's what the verse says. No other name, no other way, no other means other than Jesus. And it might sound narrow, but it's the truth. Salvation is only through Jesus. No other religion, no amount of good deeds, no amount of anything can save you other than Jesus. And salvation is a gift. You can't earn your salvation. The early church thought they could earn salvation by doing this and that, but it didn't work. You can't earn it or deserve it. It's a gift. And Jesus already paid the price for that gift. And all you have to do is receive it and understand it only comes from him. Because the world's going to offer you false salvation, false hope. It's going to offer you success, money, relationships. But all those fulfillments, they come up short eventually. Eventually, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I've tried everything and it's not working. And then you have to come to terms and say, now it's time to finally try Jesus. Because Jesus offers that true, lasting salvation and that true hope. He rescues us. Salvation isn't just a nice idea. It's a rescue mission that Jesus Christ had for you and I. Without him, we're lost and we're headed for destruction. Salvation is of paramount importance. It is why we're here. We're seeking salvation. In fact, our pastor says, you want to know why I come to church? Because I need mercy, right? And that's salvation that we hunger for. Because all throughout the week, we're probably messing up and doing wrong things. They sang a song a while ago. They said, give us clean hands, right? How does it feel to have those dirty hands? How does it feel to have that dinginess of sin upon your lives? It doesn't feel good at all. But when you find salvation and you're going to finally spread your arms out and say, now I'm free, now I'm cleansed, that's all that matters. John Harper was a passionate Scottish preacher. And he found himself aboard the Titanic on April of 1912. He was heading to America to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. But little did he know that this trip, this thing that he was going on, this missions trip to America, would end in a tragedy when the Titanic hit an iceberg as it was going by. It struck an iceberg, and as we know, chaos erupted. Many of you haven't read the true story. You watched the movie probably. And instead of focusing on his own safety during this tragic time, Harper's heart was for the souls around him. In fact, it has been chronicled that John Harper, when everybody was trying to get in the boats, here's what he said. He said, women and children and the unsaved first. So what he was essentially saying, you who are saved, you know where you're going. These people don't. They need to have another shot. So even in that moment, he's understanding what true salvation is. It's not about saving yourself. It's about saving others. And as the ship began to sink and the waters filled the North Atlantic, Harper began to swim through the wreckage in that freezing cold temperature. And here's what he was screaming out as he froze to death. He was screaming out, are there any unsaved who need to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ? And he was asking others, are you saved? As he was dying, freezing right there. Because he understood something that we need to understand. That y'all need Jesus for salvation by any means necessary. It's amazing that even as he faced death, all that was on his mind was the salvation of others. See, when I tell you, y'all need Jesus, it isn't just a cool catchphrase. We are going to make a shirt, though. It's not a simple catchphrase. It's something to live by, especially when it comes down to salvation. Jesus didn't make a down payment on your life. He paid the price in full for you and I. And salvation, it requires that surrender. It's not enough to just know Jesus. We have to surrender our life to him. Yes, we will make mistakes. Yes, we will cause issues. Yes, we will do things that seem that they could be unforgiven. But if we have that salvation embedded in us, we know where to turn for forgiveness. We know where to turn to be cleansed. And he offers salvation to everyone. Yes, that person that hurt you. Yes, that person that wronged you. It's for everyone. And it's available today. Because each and every one of us needs Jesus for that salvation that we so desperately need to understand why we're even here. And here's something that comes full circle. You have salvation so you can fulfill your purpose also. Your purpose of bringing that attitude and those words of the gospel that bring salvation to others. You're not just simply meant to sit on your own salvation, but you're meant to deliver it to others also. Our final verse as we begin to close tonight. Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. And Jesus says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Y'all just need to come to Jesus in his presence. I love how this verse says, you will find rest for your souls. I know when I was in the world and when I was doing everything wrong, I had no rest. There was no ease. There was always stress. There was always worry. There was always consequence. There was always a mess. This and that, this and that. When it rained, it poured. You've heard that term before. But that's what would happen. No rest. No rest at all. And then I'd have to face myself and say, man, where's this uneasiness coming from? I feel like I'm just going through a pattern of things. Nothing was working until I came into his presence. My Uncle Albert, I always speak highly of him as my Aunt Lorraine's husband. Amazing man of God. He didn't find the Lord in a church service, a deliverance service. He didn't find the Lord, on a men's retreat. He didn't find the Lord during any type of service. He found the Lord right there in his living room. And what strikes me so much about that is that he understood that this restless soul that he had, this restless spirit that he had, it had to go, and he knelt down right in his living room, and he was delivered right in that moment, and has been serving the Lord upwards of 25 years so far. Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." He invites the weary to come to him and find rest. He's not selling a quick spiritual superpower up, if you will, one man up or whatever. He offers a deep, soul-satisfying rest that we need. I speak a lot about my wife, and there's times where she comes from work and she's just like, man, I'm just so tired of the stress of the day and things that have been going on. Just the patience that she has to deal with and whatever the case may be. And she's just like, man, I'm just so tired. Right? And believe it or not, she's probably like, I don't believe it. But my heart kind of breaks at times when I hear it. That she's just so weary and overburdened. And then I hear her sometimes get up early in the morning, and if she's downstairs by herself, she gets up before we do. And then I hear the worship music playing. And so though she's weary and though she's overburdened, she's already setting the tone for God to do something good in her life and to give her that energy that she needs. In fact, it does wonders for me because I wake up and I'm like, man, here we go. But then I hear that and I'm like, geez. Are you burdened and weary? You're really not alone. Each and every one of us have felt that. And maybe you feel like life's got you carrying a big bag of bricks. And no matter where you're going, it feels like a weight's been carried. And I believe that when we feel those things, Jesus Christ is telling us to hand it over. And that's what this verse is telling us. Come to me and I'll give you rest. I'll take that from you. And it's not a temporary fix. This isn't Jesus saying, come to me and I'm going to give you a quick pick-me-up situation. We're talking about that full-on, deep rest that we need. The kind that refreshes your spirit. The kind that refreshes your soul. Not just your feet after a long day, but something that refreshes your soul and changes you. He's the permanent solution to a worn-out life. Not a 5-minute power nap. That's not him, right? He gives us that rest that we so deeply need. And what I find is it's not about sleeping. It's not about getting rest for the night. It's about having something change in your spirit that begins to bring hope, begins to bring peace, and begins to remind us that God's still in control. That's the rest that he gives us. And maybe you don't have it all together. Maybe it's all falling apart. Maybe everything's coming apart and you feel overburdened and overstressed. Here's the good news. Jesus didn't say, come to me all who have things figured out. He said, come to me all who are weary, right? And I will give you rest. So he's not expecting us to have this walk that's perfect at all times. He knows that we're going to grow weary. But what he wants us to know is that when those things occur, we begin to lean on him more deeply. One of the most beautiful verses I find in the Bible is when John begins to recline on Jesus' chest during the Last Supper. And people kind of misinterpret this at times, thinking that, he's just enjoying Jesus' presence. No, that's not the case. I believe that John knew things, and Jesus had spoke frequently about how he would die, and even how John would die, right? Or wouldn't die before the other disciples, and all these things. And I believe that he needed to be reassured, so we leaned more into the Father, weary and burdened about what Jesus was going to go through. And in your lives, what you're going through, what has you weary and overburdened, has things that don't seem like they're working out the way they should, just begin to lean more on the chest of Jesus. Begin to know that you can lean on him at any time. Because having that spiritual rest, having that spiritual strengthening, it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. And he says that his yoke is easier than you think. A yoke, if you know what a yoke is, it was to move oxen at times, and they would have it so that oxen can move, and they would plow the fields, and it was something that was around their neck. And what Jesus Christ is saying is that he doesn't expect you to be plowed like an oxen and plowing through the fields or whatever the case may be. What he's talking about is be yoked up and attached to him, and he will give you rest. Oftentimes we yoke up with fear. We yoke up with uncertainty. We yoke up with the world. We yoke up with people who aren't even believers in Jesus Christ, and we wonder why our spirits can't get rest. Perhaps your spirit is restless right now. You don't know which way to go. You don't know what's going on because you've been yoked up with the wrong individuals. I've been there before. It's hard for me to go from one standard at times for being a pastor to being at this job in this military career field. It's almost living like two lives at times where you have to balance it, and it's hard at times. And sometimes I've even found myself yoked up with the wrong things and said, stop, this isn't you. But God gives us that discernment. And though life may still have its challenges, if we're yoked up to him, we never get crushed, but he carries us all the way through. And we have to understand something, that when he says, come as you are, come to me, he doesn't want us to stay the same after we encounter him. When you come into his presence, you don't leave the same. You might come in here exhausted, but when you come into his presence, you become renewed. You might come in here weary and burdened, but when you come into his presence, you have a new pep in your step. You're re-energized for what he has for you. You might come in here feeling the burden of life right upon you, but when you come into his presence, all of a sudden you get that Christian weight loss where the weight is lifted up upon you. The fact is, y'all, you and I need Jesus for many reasons. These are just a few of them that we need him for. We need him for healing. We need him for guidance. We need him for so much more. But I feel like these ones are what the church is battling this day. Finding purpose, finding forgiveness, finding joy and peace, finding provision, and finding rest for your weary souls. I believe everybody in this church has felt that way. Everybody watching online has probably felt that way. But here's the thing. If you're searching for purpose, Jesus is the only one who can show you why you're here, why you exist. If you're dealing with unforgiveness, Jesus can pull you out of that bitterness and give you freedom. I just think about unforgiveness, and it burdens me just thinking about it in some ways, because it hinders so much in our lives. And I found to know people who were truly unforgiving, and then I'd see them worshiping, and I'd be like, is this a facade, or are they really and truly worshiping in freedom? You can't worship and serve in freedom unless you have that heart of forgiveness. And we all need peace and joy. And Jesus offers that kind of peace and joy that can't be stolen by life's troubles and life's circumstances. We have so many people in this church just this last year who have gone through tragedy. Sister Dorothy, how dare we not experience joy and peace? When we know what she has gone through, she lost a spouse. But she's up here praising and worshiping. You know, but maybe you had a bad encounter with somebody at work, or maybe your finances ain't right, and that's got you feeling like, man, I don't want to go to church no more. But that peace and that joy, to have your eyes focused on Jesus Christ, no matter what you're going through, is something that can only come through a spiritual encounter. If only we would aim to be like that. Right in this place, in this very sanctuary, people have been delivered, changed, set free, transformed. And how dare we not want to be a part of that in our very lives also? And salvation is here, it's ours. We shouldn't be turning away from heaven, but looking towards it, because Jesus Christ paid the penalty for you and I. He's there to do all things. He's our provider. Whatever you're lacking, He's more than enough. If only we would come to Him in that vulnerable state that says we are in need. You and I, y'all need Jesus for all things. And I don't like to offer challenges, but I would say to you, and tonight even in His presence, and I know we're a small crowd, but guess what? That doesn't matter to me. I preached in places in Mexico City. I preached at a Lucha Libre gym where there was 3 people, and I watched the Holy Spirit take over in a mighty way. But I believe tonight, if we come to Jesus, that He's waiting, ready to cleanse us, restore us, and to remind us that y'all need Him for any and all things. Will you stand with me this evening? As I always say, I believe something amazing occurs when we are in one mind and one accord. Just for a moment. I don't know where you're at in your walk. I don't know if you've been searching for purpose. I don't know if you've been hungering for a means to understand why you're even here. But I do know there's some people in here who have questioned and say, God, why am I here? Why am I going through this? I know there's many in here, a few in here, if that, who are dealing with unforgiveness. I believe we're in a place right now where we can experience freedom from that unforgiveness. And even in this moment right now, we can begin to forgive ourselves for whatever we've done. Paul was a murderer, a persecutor. In fact, one of the disciples was a patriot who would stab Roman soldiers, but yet God chose him to be a disciple. And yet we can't forgive ourselves of those things that we've done and walk into His presence and encounter the purpose He has for us. Or maybe you've been lacking spiritually in some areas that have you worried. Maybe you're a single parent struggling right now to make ends meet, and you need to cry out to Jesus and say, you're my provider, and I trust in you this very evening. Or perhaps you're struggling with salvation. You have yet to come to Him and say, I surrender. You're understanding what He's done for you. You're understanding what the Bible is about, but you haven't yielded your life to Him and say, I surrender to your salvation. The final topic we talked about was coming to Him. And I believe that's the hardest part that many of us battle with. We battle those 20 mere steps to salvation and transformation. And it's not about having a full altar. It's about seeing